Number one, Africa's resources. Kwame Nkrumah here says in chapter 1, Africa is a paradox which illustrates and highlights neocolonialism. Her earth is rich, yet the products that come from above and below her soil continue to enrich not Africans predominantly, but groups, individuals who operate to Africa's impoverishment. With a roughly estimated population of 280 million, that's at that time, right? Now it's above a billion. About 8% of the world's population, Africa accounts for only 2% of the world's total production. Here you can already see what he's insinuating, right? Like the unequal balance of the economic input and output of the different African countries and Africa as a continent in general. Yet, even the present very inadequate surveys of Africa's natural resources show the continent to have immense untapped wealth. We know that iron reserves are put at twice the size of America's and two-thirds those of Soviet Union on the basis of an estimated 2 billion metric tons. Africa's calculated coal reserves are considered to be enough to last for 300 years. Now, or new petroleum fields are being discovered and brought into production all over the continent. Yet production of primary ores and minerals, considerable as it appears, has touched only the fringes. And by the fringes, of course, he mentions. I think in today's, view, we could say that it's only enriching, right? Like a few powerful people in Africa, and most of the resources are like going to other pockets outside of Africa, right? Basically, the imperialistic, capitalistic contradictions that we see today, he has already started questioning, and that back in 1965, which is like what, 50, 70 years ago. Incredible, like basically like how he basically predicted, and nothing has changed from that time to today, which is incredible to think about. Africa has more than 40% of the world's potential water power, a greater share than any other continent. Today, unfortunately, we see like in Sahel region how a lot of it is getting dried up because of the pollution, CO2, and so on, where a lot more dryness is about to come more into sub-Saharan region. Anyway, let me continue. Yet less than 5% of this volume has been utilized, even taking into account the vast desert stretches of the Sahara. Oh, it's good he mentions it. There is still in Africa more arable and pasture land than exists in either the United States of America or the Soviet Union. This was back in 1965 again, right? There's even more than in Asia. Our forest areas are twice as great as those of the United States. Just that alone, right? If Africa's multiple resources were used in her own development, they could place her among the modernized continents of the world. But her resources have been and still are being used for the greater development of overseas interests. We as members of this chat, we already know this, right? But let's also speak to the audience. Africa provided to Britain in 1957, almost a decade before he wrote this book, the following proportions of basic materials used in her industries. And here we could see like a chart on what exactly Kwame Nkrumah means, by this. I'm not gonna just go through the chart here, but I assume that you comrades and brothers and sisters already are reading through the PDF of the book. So yeah, it's very. I'm just gonna come with the examples of this chart, right? It's actually incredible to look at it. Like for example, let's say So it's provided to Britain the following proportions of basic materials used in her industries. Yeah, it's incredible how much, for example, the French import from Africa. Phosphates, French imported 100%, right? Lead 85%, zinc ore 51, iron ore 60 to 36, and cotton 32%. It's incredible amount of how much, like for example, France got enriched at that time, right? By for example, West Africa, francophone countries which are formerly uh, colonized, you could say, by France, and still continue to be neo-colonized, you could say. To Germany, oh, interesting. Would like people have an idea that Germany is like this inferior, Western power, but when you see at the way that they conduct themselves in the global economic scale, and today being a powerful unit within EU, you could assume that Germany is not just some innocent, neutral country, right? Not, let alone Germany also participated in some imperialistic war adventures of American-led war adventures. But anyway, let's continue. To Germany, Africa provided 8% copper, iron ore 10%, lead ore 12%, manganese ore 20%, chrome ore 22%, and phosphorites 71%. That's incredible amount. Yet in none of the new African countries is there a single integrated industry based upon any of these resources. Although possessing 53 of the world's most important basic industrial minerals and metals, the African continent sails far behind all others in industrial development. Gauged on the production of primary products output in the total economic activity, by comparison with the country of the most advanced production, the United States of America, the facts can be seen at a glance. So here we are at page 3 of this book. You will have like this kind of overview here, right? Just answer me yes or no. Do you see this chart also on the PDF that is provided?
Yeah, it's included in the PDF.
Okay, fantastic, comrade.
Yes, of course.
So yes, let's look at the figures right here. We have how it's like basically a chart of what the production of primary products output. Yeah, and in comparison, we can see like different countries. Let's take Algeria, right? It's a very resourceful country that France had an incredible war against. As an African, I would actually say that it was really imperial. Like it was really a massacre that the French did against Algeria. Like over 1 million people died there, right? In the Algerian Revolution / War of Independence. It's actually incredibly sad when you think about it. So Algeria in 1958, let's just take it as an example. Agriculture, forestry, primary products output was 21%, mining 3%, 11%. You can see on the chart anyway, dear comrades. But if anybody is watching this video when we upload it, you can see the chart here, and afterwards you could pause it. Unfortunately, I think it's opposite direction this screen recording, but I can fix that. But yeah, you can see the chart here anyway. Um, this is from the United Nations Statistical Yearbook 1960. USA also has an interesting figure here, but it's 1 year ahead of the other ones. Here it's Kwame Nkrumah says it will be noted that in America, agriculture, forestry, and fishing provide a mere 4% of the total national activity, and mining a trifling 1%. On the other hand, industry, manufacture, and commerce provided 47%, because as we all know, America even today is at a higher advanced level, right? Like when it comes to industrial output, economic, activity, and like they don't even need as much to be dependent on resources, let alone that they already exploit other countries outside of America for resources because they have absolutely dominating position when it comes to economic activity on the world stage, let alone also IMF, as you all know today, International Monetary Fund, that we also went through in the introduction of the book, where America basically has a veto power in IMF and decides basically what and who and you get me, like what like America basically decides everything, and also with its imperialist friends like France, Britain, and so on. I'm not going to go into the details here, we're just concentrating on the book. So what the 47% commerce and manufacturing in the African countries included in the table, which are, with the exception of Nigeria. Nigeria, funny enough, is a very interesting African powerful position it is in today. But anyway, let's continue. Those with the highest settler communities and therefore the most exploited, agriculture is predominant. This is very interesting perspective as well, which a lot of people completely forget. Like, yes, Africa has resources, but it doesn't have an industrial base to support, extraction of these materials and resources. Even today, this was written in like over 5 decades ago, and the problems still continue with non-industrialization and so on. Anyway, industry, manufacture, and commerce lag far behind. True, Nkrumah, true. Dr. Nkrumah. Even in the case of South Africa, at this time it was a highly advanced country as well when it comes to African perspective. And this was also under apartheid, remember that. The most highly industrialized sector of the African continent, the contribution of agriculture, 12%, and mining, 13%, are equal to those of industry, manufacture, and construction put together. However, on the whole, mining has provided a most profitable venture for foreign capital investment in Africa. Funny enough, again, this continues. Nothing has changed. Its benefits for Africans can have by no means been on an equal scale. It's funny when you hear about, like, for example, Trump talking about back in the days, like when there was like a trade war between America and China, and by the way, also 20 years before that with Japan, where he was talking about unequal trade balance, which is completely ridiculous when you talk about from which perspective, right? All the unequal trade balance points to that it's unequal to third world countries, or underdeveloped countries, and so on, and mostly concentrated around Africa, right, where the output is at 100% rate, but the input from these resources that are extracted to these nations, regions, is almost around 0%. It's incredible how much an inequality there is in this imperialistic kind of construct. Anyway, however, on the whole, mining has provided a most profitable venture for foreign capital investment in Africa. Its benefits for Africans have by no means been on an equal scale. Yeah, we just talked about it. Mining production in a number of African countries has a value of less than $2 per head of population. This is you can already see the how do you call it, like you can already see the trend, right? Like basically Africans are getting nothing out of this production, or whatever extraction of materials and so on. It's incredibly, let's say, sad in the mildest form. Anyway, as Europe, for example, in quotation, France, Autrement puts it, it is quite certain that a mining production of $1 or $2 per inhabitant cannot appreciably affect the country's standard of living, affirming correctly that in the zones of exploitation, the mining industry introduces a higher standard of living. The journal is forced to the conclusion that mining exploitations are, however, relatively privileged, isolated islands in a very poor total economy. We can see it in, for example, the mining industry in, let's say, Sierra Leone or Ivory Coast, where the companies that mine, they continuously like extract mine even today, but the the output of this resource that they extract only goes to, for example, Switzerland. I've seen like a documentary about it where all of it goes to like incredibly rich Swiss villages. It's incredible, and they pay 0% tax to like the country that they are exploiting. And if the country, like for example, Sierra Leone says we want you to pay us at least, let's say, 10% of tax, or like the money that you make out of these mines, they'll just tell them, oh, we're just gonna leave you and leave your workers who work in the mines who are earning money, on this, and we're just gonna move to the neighbor, which is Ivory Coast, for example. So you can see like the trend where there's complete subjugation of the economies of these poor countries, who are, by the way, isolated. So when people ask why Pan-Africanism, we can already see, okay, the divide and conquer, right? Like Sierra Leone and Ivory Coast, we're getting bitted against each other. Anyway, let's continue, right? The reason for this is seen in the absence of industry and manufacture, owing to the fact that mining production is destined principally for exportation. Interesting stuff, right? Exportation, but not economic development of a country, investment, long-term plans, and so on, mainly in primary form. It goes to feed the industry and factories of Europe and America, to the impoverishment of the countries of origin. It is also remarked by Europe, France, Autrem, that about 50% of Africa's mining production remains in the country of origin as wages. Even the most cursory glance at the annual accounts of the mining companies refutes this claim. The excess of revenue over expenditure in many cases proves conclusively by its ties that wages received by manual labor form by no means such an exaggerated proportion of value produced as 50%. The considerable sum which go in highly paid salaries to European staffs in the skilled and administrative categories, part of which is returned to their own countries, must in many instances amount to the total received by African labor, to say nothing of the large amounts which swell the yearly incomes of wealthy directors who reside in the metropolitan cities of the West. Um,
Yo, that's a sneaky tactic.
yeah,
Very
right.
sneaky.
Yeah, very sneaky indeed. It's scary. By the way, let me just like intervene in this book session and tell you, I heard comrade here, you from Namibia, that apparently over 50% to 60% citizens of Namibia are apparently unemployed, which is ridiculous. That's over, like Namibia has like a little bit over 2 million population, and somehow over a million of its population is in basic poverty. Like it's mind-blowing to think about.
Yeah, yeah, over like 1 million people live in extreme poverty.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And imagine the resources that Namibia has, right? Like along with diamonds and other incredible resources that France, America, or Belgium, whatever, the Dutch don't even have in their own countries. So it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
I'm really sorry about this, comrade. It really makes me sad, but we can talk about it afterwards, like and analyze the chapter that we were talking about. Let me continue the session. So the assumptions also ignores the another fact, important fact, namely that wages of manual workers, low as they are partly spent on goods manufactured abroad and imported, taken out of the primary producing countries a good part of the workers' wage. Basically, the workers are paying, not the other way around. They're paying, in like in a holistic view, right? Like they are basically paying for the output, so to say, from their own salaries, which is again ridiculous. And in many cases, the imported goods are the products of the companies associated with the mining groups. Frequently, they are sold in the company's own stores, on the mining complex, or by their appointed agents, the workers having to pay prices fixed by the companies. Man, it's so frustrating to hear Kwame Nkrumah putting everything that I've been thinking on in basically written words. The poverty of the people of Africa is demonstrated by the simple fact that their income per capita, right, like what they in theory are supposed to earn, is coming the lowest in the world. Again, incredible how it has not, with inflation accounted, right? It has basically stayed at zero, like the raising of the per capita level of a normal African citizen, let alone their leaders and everything. I mean, it's just the inequality is just on the world stage is just crazy. Yeah, so we see here Basuto land, which is supposed to be Botswana, I think. I'm not sure. Maybe system, you can help me with that. Let me see here.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's Botswana.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Angola, 81 to $125 per capita. And America at that time had, let's see, 1960 to 63. Or what's that big figure? The year, or is it the money that they earn? Anyway, it doesn't matter. The per capita income was basically non-existent in, for example, Angola and Togo, United Republic, whatever, Sudan. It was 81 to 125. Um, Most of the countries in Africa, however, were even below that. It was 80, mere $80 per capita. Yeah, if we like account inflation and the like economic growth, which is, by the way, how do you call it? It's artificial because it just with inflation accounted is basically there is no economic growth at that point. So like $80 per person, and we are talking about $80 per capita per year. That's they earned $80 a year back then in 1960s. That's just insane to think about. I mean, if any of our like readers or the ones who are in this video chat, you will realize that compared to the countries that you are in, some of you are outside of Africa. You will realize that $80 per person a year is how can you even run an economy with people at that level of poverty? Anyway, that's insane. Of course, at that time, South Africa was an apartheid state, right? Like, and they had $400 per capita, but you can imagine whose pockets this money went into. And by the way, South Africa at that point was, I think Namibia was part of South Africa, if I'm not mistaken.
Namibia is like you'll see in the second last column, Southwest Africa.
Oh yeah, South West Africa. Thank you, comrade from Namibia. Yeah, this is insane. I mean, it's insane to think about like how little people earned in Africa. Anyway, like let's move on. In some countries, for example, Gabon and Zambia, up to half the domestic product is paid to resident expatriates and to overseas firms who own the plantations and mines. In Guinea-Bissau, I think that's Guinea-Bissau today, I'm not sure. Angola, Libya, Swaziland, which is called Eswatini today, by the way. Southwest Africa, that you were mentioning, that's Namibia today, and Zimbabwe, Rhodesia. Rhodesia, by the way, was another apartheid state at that time in Zimbabwe. We could maybe analyze it later. Foreign firm profits and settler or expatriate incomes exceed one third of the domestic product. Algeria, Congo, and Kenya were in this group before independence. It's funny because when these countries gained independence, you could imagine a lot of capital flight, right? Like let's say it as it is, white people, they fled unless they were, offered to have higher positions in like the economy and so on. You can see South Africa as an example. But anyway, let's move on. And Namibia actually. On achieving independence, almost every new state of Africa has developed plans for industrialization and routed economic growth in order to improve productive capacity and thereby raise the standard of living of its people. But, here's a but, right? But while Africa remains divided, progress is bound to be painfully slow, which again is true. Like, right, there's no organized principle, like organized way of dealing with these issues. And organized by, I mean like organized intercontinentally, or also like or international, like between the regions even. Yeah, where there's no basic strategy and planning and long-term plans, not because of the leaders of so-called countries, but because simply there is no system of communication between the countries and so on. Anyway, economic development is dependent not only on the availability of natural resources and the size and population of a country, but on economic size, which takes into account both population and per capita income. This we can see, for example, with let's say China, which has good for them. Like they have a huge population and their per capita income is growing, right? And it's basically a country with 1.2 or more billion people, citizens, which again just gives it like an advantage, unlike in Africa where we are basically divided, of course, because of ethnicities. That yeah, ethnicities and so on, but let's be real here, it's also because we are also getting divided and conquered to not even achieve basic powerful stage on the world stage. But let's continue. In many African states, the population and per capita products are extremely small, giving an economic unit no larger than a medium-sized firm in a Western capitalist country, or a single-state enterprise in a European socialist economy. This was back when Europe was, some of them were socialist, like for example, Poland, and let's not forget Soviet Union and so on, and Yugoslavia, which was another different thing. Africa is having to pay a huge price once more for the historical accident that this vast and compact continent brought fabulous profits to Western capitalism, first out of the trade in its people and then out of imperialist exploitation. This enrichment of one side of the world out of the exploitation of the other has left the African economy without the means to industrialize. this again, like you know, this is basically sad to see, you know, like how basically Kwame Nkrumah not only proved that it was happening already, as Ghana at that time just gained independence, right? It was about a decade after that he wrote this book, actually less than a decade, and the trend continues, right? Nothing has stopped it, and of course he will explain how you know, like strategies against this kind of continued behavior and so on. But let's continue with reading the book. At the time when Europe passed into industrial revolution, there was a considerably narrower gap in development between the continents. But with every step in the evolution of productive methods and the increased profits drawn from the more and more shrewd investment in manual or in manufacturing equipment and base metal production, the gap widened by leaps and bounds. You can see, you know, the gap. Also, if the ones of you who know about Africa, you know what Kwame Nkrumah basically again predicted. The report of the UN Economic Commission for Africa, published in December 1962 under the title of Industrial Growth in Africa, states that the gap between the continents separated by the Mediterranean has widened faster during the 20th century than ever before. True, per capita output has increased in Africa, particularly in the last 2 decades, which have seen an increase of some 10 to 20%. Already far ahead, the industrial countries have marked a per capita advance in the same period of 60%. 60%. That means that basically, let's say, for example, France has been growing at 60% at that time, right? Now economies are growing max to 10%. But anyway, like, this is just insane to think about how the disparity of income grows, you know, and it's just insane to think about. And their per capita industrial production may be estimated as high as 25 times that in Africa as a whole. The difference for the greater part of Africa, however, is even more marked since industry on this continent tends to be concentrated in small areas in the north and south. A real transformation of the African economy would mean not only doubling our agricultural output, but increasing industrial output some 25 times. The report makes it plain that industry rather than agriculture is the means by which rapid improvement in Africa's living standards is possible. There are, however, imperialist specialists and apologists who urge the less developed countries to concentrate on agriculture and leave industrialization for some later time when their population should be well fed. This again, imagine this. This explains. This puts some things in perspective, right? Okay, the imperialist specialists, who are they? France, America, and their whatever conglomerates. They tell the less developed countries, in this case, you know, Africa, and many countries around the world as well, to not industrialize, but actually being anachronistic, right? First, feed the population, then concentrate on industrialization. But what it leaves out is like, how is a country and its economy gonna feed its own population if it's not industrialized, right? It's insane the amount of basic craziness that is basically propagated on our poor African masses. Anyway,
it's similar to like the climate change, like
oh,
narrative about they're saying African countries should not drills for oil because of climate change, but you know,
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah. It's insane when you
It's
think
just
about it.
ridiculous.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, which, which can like which can increase our development if we use oil.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's
And brothers and sisters, before we continue the discussion, let's save it to a bit later. Um, when we are finished, maybe with a page or two. Of course, some of you might want to have a break. I don't know how many pages are left. Maybe you can tell me. There are many pages left. Oh, okay, okay. We are page 7 at page 4. So we just need 7 more pages, basically. I think we can take a break after I finish this part, this page. Anyway, the world's economic development, however, shows that it is only with advanced industrialization that it has been possible to raise the nutritional level of the people by raising their levels of income. Agriculture is important for many reasons, and the governments of African states concerned with bringing higher standards to their people are devoting greater time, greater investment to agriculture. And again, how are you gonna, have an efficient, agricultural output if you are not industrialized? I mean, crazy. But even to make agriculture yield more, the aid of the industrial output is needed, and the underdeveloped world cannot forever be placed at the mercy of the more industrialized. This dependence must slow the rate of increase in our agriculture and make it subservient to the demands of the industrial producers. That is why we cannot accept such sweeping assessments as that made by Professor Leopold G. Scheel of the Vienna School of Economics at a recent meeting in London of the International Geographical Congress. Commented Professor Scheidel, what a crazy name anyway. People in developing countries seem to think that all that is necessary for them to become as wealthy as the West is to build factories. Most experts agree that it is wiser and more promising to develop agriculture into self-sufficiency and to the level of a marketing economy. Okay, okay, let's see here. This comes from the Times, 24th July 1964. Let me see if there's some point to make here, or if we should just shall we take a break, dear comrades?
yes, I would. It actually we can go on. Maybe you can ask the others.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should take a break. Just as we can have a 10-minute break, I think. And then continue because we have just read like half a chapter.
Half of the chapter, yeah.
Yes, we just
Yeah,
finished seven pages, and it's until 14, so it's basically half the chapter we have read. So I think a break would be fantastic, in my opinion.
Okay,
And then we will
I have.
reconvene, and we can still stay on this, chat, but we'll just reconvene
Yes, of
in
course.
10 minutes. So yeah, yeah. Let me stop the recording.